Welcome into Texas Football Talk. I'm your host, 𝗟𝗓𝗏𝗘, once again joined by my brother, Clint. We are beginning our position previews for the 22 season, starting with the running backs. How you doing, brother?
Hey, pretty good. We're best to start off with the running back room. You have proven talent there. There's no question about how good this running back room is, and we kind of want to go through there. And I think one of the first questions you have is this the best running back in the conference, and is this the best running back in the or the nation? And I can tell you that I'm gonna vote best running back in the nation. And there are some other groups up there that do have some really good running back rooms. I can tell you Phil Steele, his name, the Texas running back room, #1 in the country. And I think that's for a reason. And we'll kind of get into each and every one of those, but it really starts with Bijan Robinson, who they see as the best running back in the 2020-23 draft. Also a Heisman contender, but we'll go through each one of these individuals, what they provided so far for the University of Texas football program, and what we expect for them, obviously based on in the future.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you. Versatility in this room, proven track record in this room. As we talk, like go through the depth chart, as you said, Roschon Johnson could start on just about every Power 5 team other than Texas. So depth, I think you're going to get 2 running backs drafted. And then the guys coming up behind them also offer a skill set that's unique to them and unique to the team. So you want to start out with Bijan Robinson?
We can start off with Bijan Robinson. I think in the way that we're going to look at this, we'll go through the running backs, and then we'll kind of figure out if they're going to go one back, multiple wide receivers, or if they're going to try to do the go-go offense, with Brendan Marion and 2 running back sets. But as we go through these running backs, hopefully we'll finish it off with that. So yeah, Bijan Robinson, end all be all, and Steve Sarkisian says it all the time. Everybody knows who he is as an athlete, but when you listen to this guy's, the interviews that he does each and every time, they ask him about being the Heisman Trophy winner. They ask him about NIL. And I think one of the biggest takeaways I've seen from Big 12 Media Day in Bijan's interview was they asked him about NIL. And he said, I'm not a flashy guy. And he says, I try to stay away from, driving that flashy car around all the time. He says, I get in my truck most times because I don't want to be stopped at a stoplight and people kind of looking in and looking out. But I think the biggest thing he said is he doesn't bring it into the locker room. He leaves the business where it's at, and he focuses on, when he gets to that running back room, he focuses on being the best running back he can for the University of Texas. And then they went up through a host of names, all the great running backs that have come through the University of Texas, and they didn't name Jamaal Charles. And he made sure that at the end of that conversation, he was like, hey, you know what? You can't forget about Jamaal Charles. So he knows what's come before him. He knows what the expectations are for him as a running back at the University of Texas. But without further ado, obviously, he's a 5-star, from Tucson, Arizona, Heisman Trophy candidate, 2022 Big 12 preseason Offensive Player of the Year, and unanimous selection to all Big 12 preseason team. And the list can go on and on with Bijan Robinson. Your thoughts on Bijan?
No, he's the epitome of leadership. This whole room is the epitome of leadership, and he's a little bit different from Roschon. Like you said, he lets his play on the field allow him to be a great leader. But just a humble kid, as you talked about, naming others first, dropping the luxury stuff when he gets to the locker room door and is just a teammate. Different from Roschon, who's a little bit more outspoken. He's got a couple of years under his belt that Bijan doesn't. But this room is the epitome of leadership in my mind. And it begins with his play on the football field. You talk about the accolades and the preseason stuff, but just as well is his leadership abilities and his ability to, on the football field, bust tackles. Like, he has a very high bust tackle rate. It's hard to bring him down with one guy. It's hard to bring him down on first contact. And then he can be explosive. He can be explosive on long gainers, give him a crease, and he can take it down the sidelines, take it up the middle of the field. And in the passing game, he's sure-handed as any running back in the country. So just an outstanding football player. Like you said, unanimous Big 12 first team All-American, Heisman talk. I just need this offensive line to perform to allow him and the rest of this group that we're going to talk about to do their thing. But happy he's on our football team, I tell you that.
And you're bringing up offensive line, and I think someone like Bijan Robinson and Roschon Robinson and Keilan Robinson, and the list goes on and on and on with these guys. I think it allows your offensive line to be average to good and not have to be great. Instead of holding a block for, a full 1 to 2 seconds, if you give Bijan Robinson, a half a second, he's going to find that gap, depending on what gap it is, or if it's outside or wherever they're, expecting him to go, because he's going to make his own plays. And we've seen that, multiple times last year, where it's like the play was supposed to go to the right. He stops on a dime, and then all of a sudden he's taking it out the backside, and he's taking it for long runs, stiff arming guys going down the sideline. So he's going to make his own plays. But I think it allows your offensive line, which we'll get into that position preview later on down the road. It allows them to not have to be great, but play at an average to good, at that position.
I agree with you in totality, but I'll go back to missed tackles, right? So, and you know this as well as I do. If your first missed tackle's in the backfield, your still chances of gaining a decent yardage play or an explosive play is limited. Like, I want him busting tackles 8 yards down the field. Mm-hmm. And that's what this offensive line's improvement will allow him to do, is not have to break tackles in the backfield or at 2 yards down from the line of scrimmage, but break tackles from safeties and corners rather than big defensive linemen having to, take a step back and reanalyze and look at the field and find out where to go. I just want him to push that much further down the line of scrimmage on run plays to allow him to a better opportunity to break tackles.
Absolutely. Moving on to Roschon Johnson. Obviously, if you're looking at Phil Steele, and again, some of this stuff we're going to go back to Phil Steele because we buy that book. Kind of want to see where he's at, what his thoughts are on the program. Currently, Roschon is the number 25 best running back in the nation. And like Jeremy said before, he could probably start on most Power 5 probably be a starter on most Power 5 schools, football programs. He is the leader of the University of Texas program. I think everything revolves around Roschon Johnson. And that is, to me, and it's one of those things to be a starter, right? And play a pivotal role in the success of your program. But when you go from, quarterback to a different position, now running back, and he's played it multiple years now, to not being a starting running back, but being the number one leader on that program, that tells you exactly who Roschon Johnson is, a person, which is really selfless and all about team, and wanting to make sure that this team, as he leaves out the door, he wants to make sure that the University of Texas program and this team changes before he exits and heads on to where we believe the NFL.
A couple things about Roschon is he gets in the end zone. So last year, 96 touches, 5 touchdowns. And Athlon Sports has him as the 4th team all Big 12. That means they selected him ahead of 5 starting running backs, right? So Bijan's first team, they selected him ahead of 5 starting running backs as the 4th team running back in the Big 12. So that tells you how much they believe in his potential and his talent. The lack of carries is the only thing that probably keeps him from being 2nd or 3rd team because his teammate is going to get a bulk of them. You would think that Bijan's going to touch the ball 25 times a game. You'd like to see Roschon touch the ball 8 to 10 times a game. But again, when he touches the ball, good things happen. We saw that in the spring game. We saw that when he busted a big run, I think, against Oklahoma last year. He has home run potential with that big body. So he's just not a guy who's a short yardage back who comes in to give him a breather or goal line or anything like that. Again, if Bijan Robinson wasn't on your team, Roschon Johnson would be your starting running back and you'd be in really good hands. But I thought that was something, that a backup running back was 4th team all Big 12. So there's 5 other running backs out there in the conference that are starting who didn't get selected onto those teams.
Yeah, that tells you how good this running back room is. And you were talking about numbers a while ago, and you were talking about 96, obviously 5 touchdowns, with 96 touches. It's really the yards per carry that I'm looking at, and I'm just going to throw a number out there, and I'm probably going to just do easy math here. But if we round that up to 100, and he had 100 carries, 569 yards, you're looking at 5.69 yards per carry, which is every time Roschon gets the ball, he's going to give you half of a first down. And again, he has the opportunity. He's obviously the biggest one of the running backs. short yardage guy. But if you're looking at this average, that's explosive to me. 5.69 yards per carry is showing some explosion with that size. And I think, like you said before, he has an opportunity to break a tackle and take one to the house just as good as Keilan Robinson and Bijan Robinson do.
So we know our friend Rod Babers with Steve Sarkisian the other day after his media day talked about two-back sets, and he gave them numbers that were crazy. Their explosive play rate, their yards per play with two backs. I think we're going to see a little bit more of this with Roschon and Bijan being on the same team. And it was almost boom or bust because you're talking about yards per carry average for him being 5.9 easy math, or 5.7 easy math. And then you talk about Bijan's yards per carry rate, it's around 6. And then you're going to talk about Keilan Robinson and his 7.2. It was almost like boom or bust. Like they either busted an explosive or they were knocked down for negative yardage. So that's what we got to see, more consistency in the run game. And again, I don't think it's any fault to these guys. They're doing what they're supposed to do. It's just can we be more consistent? Can we not have runs of negative yardage? And I think Rod's point to Steve was, there's a lot of athletes. You got a lot of weapons, and Steve Sarkisian knows that. The same sentiment. He talked about having Nair, Worthy, Whittington, and Ajay Hall on the field at the same time, or Brennan Thompson, or whoever else you want to throw out, just the depth of receiver. But I think that's one thing that I think he's going to put a little bit more into that package coming up this year. You'll see Bijan and Roschon on the field at the same time, just to make them more versatile.
Same thing. At the same time, you also have Roschon taking it, stepping in as the quarterback and running the Wildcat, at a very successful rate too. So it wouldn't surprise me if they don't use that in and around the goal line to insert their will on the defenses. But I think you've said this quite a few times, Jeremy, and I'm going to give you credit for this. You've said it multiple lives that we've done. It's being able to run the ball when the defense knows you're going to run the ball. And that's when it's important, because I think you're right. I think it was you had a whole bunch of explosive plays, and then all of a sudden you're doing well in the first quarter. Then all of a sudden in the second quarter, for some reason, the line's not blocking as well as they should. You're not getting the holes that you need to have an established run game. And Steve Sarkisian will tell you that's where it starts at. That's why the tight end's important in this offense. That's why the offensive line goes back and look at Kyle Flood and what he's recruited as big humans, is because they with all the depth of receiver you have and all of the guys that can play paper, rock, scissors to get the ball on the outside. It really starts with this run game, and you got to be able to establish that run game. And you say it all the time, you got to be able to establish that run game when the defense knows you're going to run the ball.
Absolutely. Hat on a hat. And that's what helps not wear down your defense. That's that complementary football piece. When you have a 10-point lead against Oklahoma State, Oklahoma, or Baylor in the second half, you're able to run the ball down the throat, grind the clock, and walk out with a win. That's going to be necessary this year.
All right, so moving on from Roschon to Keilan Robinson. And I thought last year we would probably see a little bit more of Keilan Robinson just because of his explosiveness. But I think when you're going 5-7, you have a running back like Bijan Robinson, obviously is your bell cow that you're giving, upwards of 30 carries a game. And hopefully we don't have to see that this year. And then you have Roschon Johnson that, like we said, could start, at any Power 5, a lot of Power 5 schools in the country. Where does that leave Keilan Robinson? And we figured he would be a gadget guy. Bring him in, he would be a slot, or bring him in orbit motion and do some crazy things with him. But I don't think we've seen enough of Keilan Robinson last year. And maybe it's because of the situation Steve Sarkisian was put in as an offensive coordinator, just trying to will our team to wins, versus trying to get more guys, carries. Your thoughts, man, on Keilan Robinson?
Like I said, he carried the ball 45 times for 322 yards, 7.2 yards per carry average. Again, another guy who's above 6 yards per carry average. Crazy, right? But where he helps me, or where I would like to see him, is help us in the special teams game. Punt return, kick return. He got his hands on a couple of punts last year. Like, he's valuable in that area. But yeah, I definitely think you need to see him in more orbit motion. I definitely think you need to see him with little screen game. Get him out in space. Let him use that speed, his elusiveness that brought him to Alabama initially and now to Texas to help cement your offense. But again, he's a guy that's another weapon. There's only one ball to go around. That's probably why you saw that. But again, he was honorable mention Big 12 last year as limited amount of playing time as he got. So the potential's there. It's just how many balls do you really have? If you give Bijan Robinson the ball 25 times, you give the ball to Roschon Johnson 8-10 times, where can he help you? And I think he can help you on special teams.
Yeah, because the chances of your team running 75 to 80 plays is about where you're going to be per game, you know? So depending on how much you got to pass it in the game, obviously the defense is going to, obviously, I'm not going to say dictate what you're doing with the ball, because you always want to dictate from the offside of the ball what you're doing to the defense. But if you are, putting, 8 guys in a box to stop Bijan Robinson, then there's probably going to be a lot more space to be able to throw the ball around.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So they're obviously going to, play that. And obviously between those guys, you're talking about between Keilan Robinson and Roschon Johnson, right around 140, 145 carries last year. We talked about running the ball. Pass, as far as pass game goes, how did these 3 running backs really affect the passing game? And what do they give you as a, as an addition to what they're doing, obviously running the, rushing the ball?
Just scheme.
Your thoughts, man?
Like, anytime you line Bijan up in the backfield and you motion him out as a receiver, we've seen it multiple times. It confuses coverages. They'll end up with a linebacker on him that he could beat. All you got to do is get the ball in his hands. He's going to make the first guy miss. If it happens to be a linebacker, then he's into the secondary. But in pass protection, I think Roschon is probably one of the best pass protectors, and it's going to come in handy when you're facing teams like Alabama with the pass rush that they have, that these guys are able to pass block. So we weren't just talking about receiving game. Their job in the pass game is to protect Quinn Ewers or Hudson Card, whoever happens to start. But yeah, they're definitely a threat. Shuttle screens, like I say, motion them out of the backfield, get them on a linebacker or safety, let them do their thing.
So going back to this, to Bijan's interview during Big 12 Media Days, actually 2 of the things you just talked about is 2 of the things he talked about. And they asked him during the offseason, right now, what have you worked on the most? And he says pass protection. Because I think Bijan knows that is probably one part of his game that he needed to work on. Obviously, NFL football teams are going to look at that, right? They need you to run the ball. They need you to do a lot of things. But if you can't protect the quarterback from the running back position, that is obviously something they'll look at when it's time to draft him. So he said that's really one of the things he worked on this offseason was to get better pass protection. The other thing he said was, and it was kind of a jokingly matter, that he has the best hands on the football team. And he will actually go up to every one of those wide receivers and say, yeah, I got the best hands on the football team. So Bijan Robinson believes he has the best hands on the football team. And you believe it, because when you see this guy run wheel routes or you see him run slants, he looks like another wide receiver. He naturally looks like, he could play the wide receiver position if he wasn't a running back. And we've seen that multiple times last year. But I thought it was funny because he called the wide receivers out and he said, hey, I got the best hands on the football team. And he may have the best hands.
Yeah, and you're talking about transition to the NFL, and it brought to mind Tashard Choice. He's got a brand new coach who's coaching the running back position from Georgia Tech. Guy we're happy to have on the staff. Brings a ton of energy. But one of the drills I saw him running in the all access was pass protection, pass pro on the pads in the end zone. And he was coaching up Keilan Robinson about getting his legs underneath him. But if anybody knows what package it takes to be an NFL running back, he can look right to his coach, who could say it's just as important in the league to pass protect than it is to run the football for a 7 yards per carry average. Because you got to take care of the quarterback. But yeah, Tashard Choice, a hell of an acquisition to the coaching staff, and I'm sure he's coaching these guys on the fundamentals of pass pro as well.
All right. We talked about the big 3, right? Because you call them the big 3. And you may have an opportunity to see a 4th running back, and you may have an opportunity to see a 5th running back. You hope you never get to that point unless it's a blowout against a team and you have, you're trying to get guys, in game in real life snaps. One of those being from a small town of Hallettsville, Texas, and Jonathan Brooks. you're talking about 6 foot, 199 pounds. He played in 4 games, but every time that you've seen Jonathan Brooks get the ball, it's an explosive play. Like, he is really, really hard to bring down.
Yeah, good things happen. He's elusive. He has everything you want in a back. Elusiveness, strength. You saw that in the spring game against the first teamers. Like, he, got a draw play. I'd call it a draw play because it started out in the middle of the field and he worked his way to the sidelines and he eluded 6 or 7, first team defense Longhorns, took it down the sideline, got pushed out of bounds eventually. But like you said, every time he touches the ball, something good happens. So the future's bright in that running back room.
Talk about this running back room and moving on. Obviously, Jaden Blue, true freshman, All-American, bowl selectee, decided to forego his senior season. So, believe Jaden Blue was an early enrollee. Is that correct? I think he was an early enrollee.
Yeah,
so he's had some time in the offense, which is really good. But when you're looking at this running back room and how great it is at this particular point, all 3 of these guys, and Keilan Robinson, Roschon Johnson, and Bijan Robinson, have an opportunity to be drafted in this year's NFL draft. And in saying that, obviously, you've been able to recruit the position well. And I don't want to get into the future because we haven't played this season yet. But that's definitely going to be a drop-off from what the current 3 that you have to what is currently coming behind them. Do you see that as a thing?
Like I said, every time Jonathan Brooks touches the ball, he shows great potential. I mean, going behind the first team offensive line again in the spring game, he was running behind with the seconds against the first and made a good account for himself. Jaden Blue coming out of Klein Kane probably would have been the number 1 running back in his class had he not forgo his senior season. So, yeah, Bijan Robinson is a Heisman Trophy candidate. You're not going to have those in your backfield all the time. Roschon Johnson has been doing his job since he got here. And like I said, it would be the 4th-team Athlon preseason running back as your backup. So, yeah, depth is probably going to fall off a little bit. Again, Keilan Robinson, 7.2 yards per carry average. But that's why you got to show our choice. That's why you have Steve Sarkisian. That's why you could talk about Brian Robinson, Najee Harris, the running backs he had at Alabama, and say, hey, here's what I can do. So you can continue to stockpile this room with those top-tier running backs. So, yeah, will there be a little drop-off? I'm sure there will be. I mean, Bijan Robinsons don't grow on trees. You don't have those very often. But yeah, I think it's gonna have a little bit of a fall up, but we'll see.
Yeah,
I think you're in a good position going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. From a leadership standpoint as well, because you have a lot of obviously Roschon Johnson being in that room, Bijan Robinson, he's not really vocal. He's follow me by the way he performs on the football field and who he is as a person. So definitely excited about this running back room. I'm gonna tell you, like I said, if this offensive line, which we'll preview on a later date, can get substantially better than what they were last year, I think the sky's the limit with this running back room. I think the sky's the limit with this offense. We were able to put up numbers last year as an offense, but I think the other thing this allows you to do is, again, you have Hudson Card, who's been around for 3 years. You have Quinn Ewers that are, obviously fighting for that, QB1 position to be able to start. And when you turn around and you have these guys in the backfield, it makes you feel a little bit better. Or you have the weapons that you have, makes you feel a little bit better about going out there and taking a snap when you can hand it off to either 3 of these guys that are going to see substantial playing time from that running back room. Yeah,
I'm excited to see him play in 2022 and expecting big things, and I'm sure those things are going to happen.
Well, hopefully you enjoyed this preview of position preview of the running back room. You can find us on Facebook at Texas Football Talk. You can find us on Instagram at Texas Football Talk, and you can find us on Twitter at TX Football Talk. Something we have up there new right now is the Inner Circle. If you go to our YouTube page and you hit join, there will be some description about the Inner Circle. We'd definitely like you to join as a member, but don't forget to hit the like button and hit that subscribe button. Thank you for listening as always, and hook 'em.
Hook 'em.